Hi, I'm Bernhardt. I'd like to welcome you to this third in a series of You Can Play Jazz Piano. At this time, I'm not alone this time. I have a good friend here. I'd like you to meet Mr. Mike D'Amico on guitar, electric guitar, and Mike's going to help a little bit. Today we're focusing on some other territory than in the first two videos. This time I'd like to put the accent on soloing, on building a solo, finding out what scales we use in the solo, comping behind a soloist. That's why it's helpful to have another instrument present. We'll show you some things about that. I'd like to cover several bases at once. While we're talking about solos, it's a good chance for those of you that are interested in learning how to perform some pieces for other friends or at parties or for the public or whatever, or just for yourselves. We're going to cover like how to write a lead sheet out with a melody so that it's really clear and put the chords underneath it so everybody knows what's going on. We'll show how two professional musicians might rehearse a song and take it apart and talk about the various scales that are used while approaching especially the solo sections of the tune. But we'll also focus a little bit of our attention on actually playing the melody of the song and how we might trade off between the two of us. We'll give you some suggestions. Also I've written 4 little etudes for you to study, depending upon your degree of development. That's another thing I want to mention in a minute. It might be very helpful to you as far as getting through harmonic changes on the keyboard and still keeping a consistent idea going with, in the piano, generally speaking, it's the right hand, to keep that a consistent flow going that either works against or with the changes with the basic harmonic foundation. So I'm going to try to very clearly lay all this out with Mike's help. After we do the etudes, then we'll take 3 different pieces with different feels. One is a blues tune, another is a bossa nova tune, a samba tune, and another one is with what we call a 16th note feel, not a jazz swing feel, a beautiful song called Sarah's Touch. We're going to work on that and actually prepare it for a performance. Hopefully, but we'll have to condense it time-wise so we don't run over. What I'd like to start with is I think I'll present to you a couple ideas about developing a solo. One thing I wanted to mention before we go on to that is that if you find that we're talking a little bit over your head on this video, I suggest very strongly, if you haven't seen the first video, which was called Getting Started, and the second one, which had the focus on chord voicings and voice leading and basic jazz keyboard harmony, where we developed a concise and consistent system of notation for chords. I suggest you maybe backtrack and look again at those, because we covered some of the basic moves in piano technique on the first video. We covered a little bit about playing on the blues. Today we're going to play on a minor blues to give you a little bit of different. We talked about some playing on certain modal structures in the first video. In the second video I covered a lot of what we do underneath playing chords, so I'm going to leave a lot of that material and assume that you know it. So this tape will be a little bit more at an intermediate level, and let me remind you once again, your best friend is the review button on your VCR, to go back. If something goes over you, just don't hesitate to go back and try to uncover what it is that's missing. I'll try to be thorough, in imparting whatever information you can. The other point I'd like to make is one of the most difficult things for a teacher of jazz is to discuss this particular subject, because it's so abstract. It's so difficult to learn what's involved in creating a solo, because it's an intensely personal thing. It's a spiritual thing. It has to do with how you feel about music, how you feel about the beat itself, how rhythm affects you, what you like to hear. You always have to trust your ear. You have to trust your inner feeling. At first, it's very difficult to come up with a solo. I know most beginning soloists, and some more advanced ones, try to play everything they know in the first 16 bars, and then there's nowhere left to go. So you have to pace yourself. It's almost like long-distance running, in the sense that you have to really get in shape for it. So we're going to be doing just the very basic stuff on this, and then you're going to be on your own. Okay, at this point, I'd like you to, if you would, refer to the booklet that came with your tape. Now, if for some reason or other you don't have a book that has all the notation that we're going to use today, send a card to Homespun Tapes right away, and they'll be glad to send you the booklet, because I think it's quite important today. It's going to have a lot of written material in here to refer to. It'll improve your reading. Even if you're not a reader, I think by the time you get done with this, you should be, because we're going to write out some melodies. The first 4 etudes that I've written for you to begin working on your soloing are going to be in this booklet, and then all the songs that we're going to play later when Mike joins me again on guitar. So if you look at the first of the 4 etudes, and maybe we can go to a split screen here where you can see my hands on the keyboard, you'll notice that this is an exercise in playing major 7th and major 9th chords, which you'll notice that I write a major 7 with a bar across it, and I write a major 9th with a 9 with a bar across it. In case you're from South America or Europe or somewhere where your 7s are ordinarily barred, this doesn't mean a dominant 7 chord, it means a major 7th chord. Now you'll see that this is a 16-bar phrase, just for example, that has an F pedal tone, which means the whole thing is based over an F. Now if I play the right-hand chords in the treble clef, I'm playing a major 9th, an F major 9th. Then I go to a B flat major 9th, E flat major 9th, A flat major 9th, D flat major 9th, G flat major 9th, and F major 9th. Now this is all over a pedal tone. And the purpose of this exercise, not only are major 9th chords really beautiful things, you begin to discover something about consonant tonality as you're working with this. It's also a study in going through the cycle of fifths as you're playing the scales of these different tunes. So, say on an F chord over an F, you can either put it in the 2nd or the 9th, and then the 5th doesn't work too well against a major 7th chord. Sometimes what I do is I use the Lydian 5th, which is the Lydian 4th, pardon me. It's a raised 4th. So in the F major scale, it would be, instead of having a B flat in it, you're going to raise the 4th tone a half step. An augmented 4th, we call this. So we could use this Lydian scale, or we could just skip the 4th for the time being. Let me show you, if I'm going to play on this. Now we go to an F, a B flat major 9th, and here I can again use, in a B flat scale, I'll use the Lydian 4th. So You'll see I have sharp 4 in parentheses on these chords. That means you're using the Lydian mode in that key. Now we go to an E flat major 9th. And once again a Lydian. All over an F. Now we go up another 4th to an A flat. With a sharp 4. You'll have to figure out these scales as you go through this, right? Now we go to a D flat Lydian scale. Now we go to a G flat Lydian major 9th. I have the raised 4th, 1, 2, 3, 4, raised 4th. Back to your F chord, a half step down. So let's say I play this in a moderate tempo, and maybe if you had a computer or something that'll give you a constant pedal tone, you could record a track first with just a lot of Fs in the bass line. I'm going to B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, back to F. That A flat over F is almost like an F minor with a flat 6, an F minor. D flat major 7th, G flat. So if you fool around with this, just say do it in that key, starting with the tonic chord over tonic major 9th Lydian over that note, then going up in 4ths for a while. You go up F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, and then back to F. Now you could do this in another key. You want to do in G, you'd start on G major 7th, then you go up to C, then to F, to B flat, to E flat, to A flat, and you'll be back at G again. So this is a good etude. You see I've written do this in B flat, E flat, A flat, etc., all through the cycle. If you're really dedicated, it's worth the time, because in the meantime you'll begin to discover some nice voicings, and these are very beautiful chords. So that's the first of the 4 etudes. Now let's go to the second example of these little etudes. You'll notice that I've written 2 4-bar phrases called a repeating tag. This is something I think Miles Davis in the 50s started this with his groups. Like say this is in the key of C. You start on the 7th chord of the 2 position, you go to the 7th chord of the 5 position, then you go to the minor 6th chord with a flat 5, and the 3 chord with a augmented 5th. And this just keeps repeating over and over again, and it's a good way to start learning how to move around changes as you're soloing. Just keep repeating that over and over again. Now, if you want to go a little more complex, look at the next example. Here I have some passing chords. In the first bar leading to the G, I come from a half step into the G, and then I move down to an F. And then when I'm in the E minor 7th flat 5, I come in a half step above the A chord, and then a half step back into the D. It's just a little more complicated, and it's fun to try to find changes with your soloing that go over this. a chance to practice your harmonic approach in your chords too. So very briefly, let me run over the last two etudes. These are much more advanced. I don't know if you're a beginning or intermediate student, these might go over your head. The third etude is a study in really going through all the changes in the book, gradually moving down in steps of a 4 in a 2-bar phrase. So basically what the chords are is like C minor 11s. Now we do the same thing starting on G minor, then go to D minor, and then A minor. See? Pretty complicated, but if you work at it slowly, you can come up with some nice ideas trying to solo on it. So I'll leave you with that one. It takes a lot of work to get through this, and you're going to run into some keys that just stop you cold, but do what you can on it. It repeats the whole thing, the cycle repeats over. As does the fourth etude, I jotted down for you. Now if I play this in a ballad tempo, you'll see I've set up another cycle. This time we're going down a fourth every bar. It's like starting on here. 3, 4, 1, 2. I wrote a little melody that it's very interesting once you get this progression down to start soloing on it, you know. Again, I said that's a little more advanced. It's going to take some work to think it out, but for those of you that really have a dedication to delve into this stuff, that's another good repeating one. And the thing is, it gets your hands almost if you can do it with your eyes closed. Remember Art Tatum and George Shearing and the guys that were fantastic piano players, Lenny Tristano, that were sightless. You know, it gives you a great feeling for the keyboard. Often in your practice, I suggest doing that. Try playing without looking at the keyboard, just to get the feeling of the way things lay. You know, each key has a different feel to it. And these last two etudes would be very beneficial. And also when you do the first two etudes in all the keys, you know, if possible. I know this is a rough thing to do, but I think you could do it. You know, there's no time limit on studying this stuff. So look at these etudes. Have some fun with them. Come up with your own. That's another thing. You know, there's no reason you can't develop something that you want to learn and use it for practicing. It might even be a section of a song that you're working on, composing, or a section of a song that you like, or a simple tune that try playing it in all the keys. Okay, now what I think I'd like to do is we'll bring Mike D'Amico back on the scene, and we'll start working on some actual rehearsals and performances of some tunes, and we'll talk about soloing a little more in depth. Okay, now let's start looking at the next thing in the booklet, which is a tune of mine called Blues Blues, or people say Be-Loose Blues. I call it Blues Blues. It's a little kind of a bebop tune that I wrote a few years ago and recorded on an album called Trio on the DMP label. You'll notice the way I'd like you to look at this is a nice, concise, clear way of writing a lead sheet. On the top line, you'll notice I've written the melody all the way through for 12 bars, and then there's a repeat sign back to the top with the proper accents and rests so that It adds up to 4 beats to the bar. We're in 4/4 time here. On the bottom line, I've written the rhythmic hits, and in the middle there's the chord voicings, which we talked about before. In case you missed it, you should look back on our tape on chord voicings, because they're really accurately notated here. Now what we're going to do, below that you'll see a section called solos, which we'll get to in a minute, where we're going to play, actually play solos on the tune. Now maybe for purposes of illustration, Mike, you could play the top line with the accents and stuff, and we'll do it a little slower than we'd perform it, just to show you how we run it down. And I'll play the chords down below, the rhythmic accents. So let's try it at a slower than normal tempo. I'll count it off here in 4/4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. See, now let's switch parts where I play the top line, the melody. I'll just play it without chords, single line, and you play the chords. Same thing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So actually, if we were performing that, we could do a chorus of each or something, or maybe when we come to it, you play it the first time and I'll play it on the out chorus. Now let's look down on the solo changes. Now, this is just a minor blues in essence. A little different there. I go to a D flat ninth. Now we follow the chords that I used during the tune itself. And we set on F minor again. And then now what you want to do, this is very difficult to talk about when you're constructing a solo on something. First of all, it's entirely up to you, your tempo, the mood you want to create, how complex you want to get. There's an infinite number of factors involved in soloing in jazz. The basic things, at least for our purposes now, is to stick pretty close to the harmonic structure you've decided on. Try to use the scales that refer to those different chords. Try to figure out if there's a part that's confusing you, figure out before you go to play it what scale you're going to try to pick some of your notes from. Try to pick common tones that, like I can pick an F on the F minor. An F is a common tone that works through all of these, so maybe I could build a solo off an F, doing something rhythmic on it, say. And then in the second chorus, you may want to build into something else. You may want to go into block chords. Where you kind of play the melody that you're improvising in octaves and add the notes of the chord. You do something like that. See, there's total freedom, and this involves your own spiritual approach to music, your own discipline. All these factors enter in. So there's very little I can tell you about soloing, except give you a few examples here. But I think for our purposes now, it might be fun. Let's do it, run it down this way. You play the melody, and we'll do just one chorus. And then maybe you play a couple choruses and a solo, and then I'll play 2 or 3 choruses. And then I'll play the melody out. We'll just play the melody. Usually in a blues, we play the melody 2 times in the front and 2 in the back. But for reasons of time, we're going to condense it a little bit here. And then on the very last chord, we'll end on that 4-and of that last bar of the 12th bar of the tune. Okay, now let me try to find the right tempo for this. Sometimes when you're picking a tempo, it's very important. If you get the wrong tempo, it's a disaster. So it's nice to think of the song, some part of it. Let me say, okay, I think of the head a little bit, and that gives me my tempo that I want to use. So I'll count off 6 beats, and then we'll be into it with you playing the melody, right? Here we go. A 1, 2, a 1, 2. Fun. So you see a little bit about the soloing in there. When Mike started his solo after the first chorus, he kind of took it easy for a while. He built into it a little bit. You know, he didn't go for broke right at the beginning. You know what I mean? There's a ways to go. And in fact, if you're playing live in a situation where you have no time limit, you may want to build your solo very carefully so that you don't expend all your knowledge and energy and everything else right at the very beginning. You like to build up to a climax. So what he did, he played a single line thing for a while in the tempo like that, and then on the second chorus you'll notice he really doubled up. Like go back and review his solo, you'll see how much more exciting it got the way he built it. Now I tried something similar where I referred to the melody of the tune a little bit at the beginning of my first chorus. I did 3 choruses, I think. And then I just started stretching out, and then I started doubling up a little bit, similar to what Mike did, because he gave me that idea. That's the great thing about jazz, the feeding of ideas. I mean, just the difference of my being here alone and being here with guitar, we can feed off of each other. You can develop information, and you know, that's the great thing about jazz. Add drums and bass, and then you've got a lot more minds at work. It's really fun when you get this all happening together. So here's something to work on. You can do this with, take any Charlie Parker tune or Bud Powell tune, any blues that you like. Write your own lines if you want, you know. But I'd advise you to maybe think about this system of notation, because if you show up with some of your peers you've never played with and you want them to play one of your tunes, if you have it written out like this, it's going to be really nice for them, you know. Everything's very clear. All the rests are marked. You have to put some thought into when you're sitting down to write it. You try to stay within, see, I have 4 flats in the key signature here. I try to keep that consistent, so instead of writing a B natural in the beginning note of the second bar, I write a C flat, because we're working in a flat key. The only time I use the sharp, and there's a G sharp over the E over C chord in the 9th bar. That's because we're playing an E chord, you know, so I use a G sharp in that sense, you know what I mean, instead of an A flat. So if you're consistent and you're clear, it's going to save a lot of time in your rehearsing, and it's just a good idea to do this. This is what I really prefer, and I ask of all my students to do this. Now let's move on to the next tune you'll find in the book. It's called Polly Lookout. This is a tune by our guitarist Mike D'Amico that we just recorded on my new CD, Heat of the Moment. And It's written a little bit differently. It's for one thing, it's written in cut time, in 2/2 time. Although the beats go by 1, 2, 3, 4, we think of them as 1, 2, 1, 2, because it's a samba flavor. You know, you get the. It's a different approach, and we're not using the swing time now. On this one, we're using more of what we call a straight eighth feel or a straight 16th feel. Now you'll notice on this that I've written the changes. I've written the melody only on one line this time, and I have the right-hand chords for the piano written as well as the melody. And then above that, I have the actual chord notation that we're going to use. And you'll notice a lot of these chords are like an E over C, a B over C sharp. And then we go to a D6/9, then so you'll see just 2 bars before the repeat sign, you see. If you just play the F triad going up chromatically and the bass line going on, which is a nice progression, by the way. I like that. So what maybe we go to an overhead shot, and I'll show you how I try to play a melody at the same time, using the top fingers in my right hand, and also hit the chords. Like I might play like this. See, I'm playing the written part all in the right, using my thumb on 2 notes here. And then playing the chords. So I'm splitting my hand into 2 parts. Playing the chord with this part. I don't know if your hand's big enough, you don't have to play the F sharp. So let's see, on this probably we're going to double the melody, don't you think?
Yeah,
it would sound good. And I'll play the bass line and the chords along with it. And what we do is we'll play it a little slow the first time so they get an idea. Let's just go up to the little interlude section that leads into the solos. Okay, let's play it slowly for them once. 1, 2, 1, 2. At a little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a 7-bar phrase that leads into the section called solos. You see that there. Now, generally speaking, we play this at a brighter tempo. I just wanted to show you how we approach it slowly first. That's a good way to practice things, is to try them slowly. If you can play them slowly, you can play them fast, but not necessarily vice versa. So let's just look at that little 7-bar interlude, which happens to have an E on the melody all the way through it. So that would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. Now we'd be into the solo section, see? So when we put this all together, you'll see we're doing it in different sections, you know. Here I haven't lettered the sections or anything. We'll just follow the roadmap as it exists on the paper. Now for the solos, you'll notice on every bar, except for the last 3 bars, I've written a scale. Now these scales that I'd like Mike to tell me about, because I'm not quite sure how he came up with them. The first chord we're playing is an E over C, right?
Yeah.
So how do you figure out what the scale you're going to play for your solo on that?
Well, of course, the bass note determines a lot of what's going to happen.
All right, that's a C here.
C, and then I look at the E, the top, over your slash,
Right.
and I look at that as a triad, or if it's written differently, how it's written. But I look at it as an E triad over a C bass.
Right.
So it's this sound, and to me, it falls right in the Lydian augmented scale.
In C major, right?
C major, starting on the C.
Right. you raise the fourth.
And the fifth of the
So you're augmenting.
C scale.
You're augmenting the fourth and the fifth. Right. Okay. So you see that scale written there, right?
Yeah, and I'd just like to say too that don't try to absorb the whole progression at once. Work chord by chord.
Right. One bar at a time.
So we move to the next chord, and it's a B7 sus4.
You put a ninth in there too, right?
Yep, ninth. And
It's kind of like an A over a B.
yeah, it's kind of like an A triad over a B.
Right.
And we can look at that as a B, what's known as a B Mixolydian scale. And
It gets into modes. Yeah.
yeah, it gets into the mode thing, but all it is a B scale with a flatted 7th degree instead of a natural 7. So it's this sound. And if you hear the chord,
It looks like an E major scale to me too.
yeah.
It actually, if you played an E major scale.
Sure.
So
Because
we have three ways of telling that scale, right?
Sure, because the
A
B is
mixolydian.
actually the fifth of our E scale.
Right. So it's the same notes as an E scale.
Yeah.
That might be one of the easiest ways to think of it.
Yeah.
So now what's next?
And what's next? We have a B flat 7th, flat 5. So that's a dominant 7th with a flat 5. Okay? So it's got this sound, and I look at that as a B flat Lydian flat
That's the
7.
raised. Yeah. So it's a B flat 7 scale with the fourth raised
With a
half
fourth
tone.
raised, and the flatted 7th, though.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Now if you look next, that's going to resolve to A major, which is our next chord, A6-9.
Right.
It resolves a half a step. Right to our A6-9.
Right. So what scale do you play there? Then?
Well, I'd probably just stick to regular A major, or maybe...
That works. Just a straight A major scale.
A straight A major scale would be fine. Okay, in our next chord we have A flat 7, sharp 5.
Okay, we
Okay,
have a,
augmented. Okay. Now I might choose, you could play a whole tone over that also, which would
right.
Okay.
Every tone, the whole tone scale is a one tone apart.
one tone apart, all whole steps.
Right.
That'll work.
Uh-huh.
Or what'll also work is an A melodic minor scale.
Which is the ascending melodic minor,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Like over an A flat chord. So
Over an A flat 7th, you build a melodic minor scale a half a step up.
that's a nice scale.
And it has all your tensions in there, sharp 9, sharp 5.
Right. And then a
And
regular G7 scale?
Regular
on the
G7 scale on a G7th, which is, you could call it a mixolydian,
Right.
which is a G scale with a flatted 7th degree.
G to G on the white notes.
Yep. Now you have a G flat 7,
Right.
okay?
Just go down a half step for
Just
that.
go down a half step, keep your G mixolydian scale,
Right.
and we finally resolve, after the string of deceptive chords, we finally resolve.
We come to rest on an F.
We come to rest on an F major 7 with a sharp 11.
Well, or sharp 4. It's the
Yeah,
same
sharp
with
4,
a B in
same
it.
note. It's a raised 4th degree.
A Lydian scale
And it's
again.
this sound, which is an F Lydian scale, which is major scale with a raised 4th and a major 7.
That's F to F on the white notes.
Yeah.
And we just stay on that chord, right?
Sure. And just as an exercise, you could just run through these scales, measure by measure,
Right. Okay, that gives us our basic set of tones. Now, is there a way to use a blues scale over this whole progression? Like,
Sure. Sure, we can come up with like a pentatonic kind of blues scale sound, which will work.
Which is like, right, like pentatonic?
Yeah, sure.
1, 2, 3, 5, 6, right?
Yeah, which
Let
will
me
give
play
you
the chords and you try
Okay.
playing that scale.
Yeah, you can like compact all this, and what's nice is to go in and out of your modes as we discussed, but use the blues to connect it all together.
Well, you could use this pentatonic scale, or you
Sure.
could use the actual blues scale, right?
Sure. Sure. Yeah, if we play the chords and we'll hear the different sounds.
Let's try it with the pentatonic. I'll play the chords
Okay.
like in a slow tempo.
Okay.
1, 2, 2. When you get to the F, though, you kind of stay in
get
the
to the
Lydian
F,
mode. You stop playing
When
the
you get to
blues,
the
right?
F, our progression kind of resolves, so we have to
Right.
go to an F Lydian mode.
Right.
But we can
right.
go in and out of these pentatonic scales
Right.
to
Let's
get.
try it again. There's a little That's great, yeah. We're finally resolving on the F
Finally
Lydian.
resolving.
So that gives us a way of actually changing every change or doing something that connects over the whole phrase.
Sure.
Huh? Uh-huh. So there's some food for thought with your improvisations, and we're gonna play on this in a minute. First, let's look at one more thing. Just after that, you'll see a little interlude. That this we would use like say if you played the first solo, then we'd do the interlude, and then I'd do the next
state
solo.
the interlude, which is kind of based on the melody a little,
Uh-huh.
and it connects the two soloists together.
Uh-huh.
Instead of just running right into the next soloist.
So it leads up. It kind of finishes one and
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
gives
kind
you
of,
a connecting piece.
Wraps the solo up, the first solo up, and sets the next soloist up to
Right.
play.
I noticed you got some interesting tensions in there too, like a G over B flat chord,
Yeah.
which
Those
is
are like
unusual.
bitonal.
Yeah, and then later there's E over C again, and then
Yeah.
an E flat over B, a real something over something sound.
Yeah.
You know. So,
Yeah, and that's just kind of to create a mood. You can use
Uh-huh.
those weird chords to create different moods.
let's try playing the interlude once,
Okay.
like 1, 2, and 1, 2. Then we'd be into the next solo.
Into the next
Uh-huh.
solo.
That's great. I like that, how that works. We could play it a little tighter. You want to try maybe just performing this and finding a good tempo for it? And,
Yeah, that's another.
Do you want to take the first solo, or should I?
I'll take the first solo, and then we'll have the piano after the interlude.
Okay, so then we'll need some kind of visual cue or something at the end of your solo when
Sure.
when it's your last time through. Maybe look over at me.
Sure.
Let me know when we're going into the interlude. And then likewise, at the end of my solo, you notice the solo section is just has a repeated on it. It says DC at the end of
Yeah.
the solo. That means da capo, or back to the very top. And you'll notice the bar before the DC, there's a little, I have an eighth note written there with an accent on 4 on the and of the fourth beat, which is a stop. If we were playing this with a rhythm section, we go. That gives us an open space to come in with the melody again.
Pickup notes.
Right, so that last bar where it says DC is a little, should have maybe those 3 pickup notes in it, so
Yeah.
when we go back to the top. Okay, I want to make sure to find the right tempo, thinking of the tune. How's that feel?
That's great.
Okay, so, at the end, we're going to stop where it says fine there. Look at, there's 10 bars and then a repeat sign, And then see, there's 5 bars more, and it says fine. That means the very last time we're going to end there. That's the final note. So we're going to hold that C major 7th with a 6th in it. So I'm going to count 3 half notes, and we'll be at the pickup, okay? 1, 2, 3. Well, we could have done it better. That's always the case, you know. Like, I think we should have done it a little faster, maybe, if we were going to record it or something. You know what's difficult for me is not having a bass player here.
Sure.
On a tune like this, it really helps to not have to run the bass line.
Exactly.
It leaves me much freer, but you'll notice I was trying to do what a guitar does in a samba kind of thing, especially behind your solo.
Yeah.
I hope that works. You have to experiment around when you're working with a tune like this. I think if we spent the rest of the tape on it, we could get a really fine performance of it. But what I want to do is move on to a song that is one of my favorites for many years that I've had a lot of experience with. Just recently, Mike and I have started playing it. This is a song called Sarah's Touch. Refer to the final tune in the booklet. This one is, I've chosen for several reasons. It's called Sarah's Touch. It's by a great musician, a good friend of mine, Mike Maneri. And first of all, it's a beautiful piece of music. It stands for itself, you know, it just stands alone as a great song. It has a solo section that's rather simple, which enables you, instead of playing a lot of chords the way we have in the last two examples, you're essentially just working off 4 different chords or 2 different modes while we're doing the soloing, except at the very tail end of the solo, which I'll explain. And the third reason is almost every time I talk to a student or a fan or somebody that's familiar with my playing, they say, "Oh, I love that tune, Sarah's Touch." Mike originally gave it to me to record back in 1980. which I did. And then later when we were with Steps Ahead together, we performed it all over the world many times. It's a great piece of music. So for these various reasons, I'd like to really focus on it for a while. I've tried to write a fairly comprehensive lead sheet on it. Some of it is on double stave and some is on single stave. And I've numbered the letters on the different sections, letter A, letter B, letter C, letter D. This is something we do quite often. And there's some interlude sections near the end that get into 5/8 time signatures or 5/16 time signatures, 4/16, 5/16, 6/16, which I'll explain also a little bit later. To begin with, the tune doesn't have doesn't have a swing feel to it. It's not dun tucka dun tucka. Nor is it a samba. It has more of a pop feel, a contemporary straight eighth note feel. So we're dealing in a different territory. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to voice the chords. I'd like you to come up with your own voicings on this. But first of all, what I think we'll do, we'll just work on letter A and try to find the right tempo for this. Letter A begins with just the piano, Mike. And then the second time there's a repeat sign you'll see at the end of letter A, which goes back, and then you join me playing the melody there, right?
Sure.
And then we'll stop it going into letter B.
Okay.
So let's just do that much. Now I'm trying to think of the tempo of this. You think of a quarter note. You'll notice there's a 2/4 bar that crops up a few times in here. You simply, instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, you just count 1, 2, and then go on to the next bar. So don't let that confuse you. It's real easy. Let's say the piano starts alone, and then when we get to the repeat, the guitar will join me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. That's pretty good for the A section, right? Now all we do when we get up to the B section, which immediately, let me write something in here, make sure I know where letter B is. I do a little, and then we're at letter B, which is the same exact melody that we just played, only we're up a minor third on the scale into the key of A flat. So let's try that. I'll count 4 beats and we'll be in at letter B. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you'll notice right over that A flat chord there, right at that moment, it says fine. When we come back to the da capo, the DC, the last time, we're going to retard. It says C, it says last time retard, a bunch of dots, and then fine on that A flat chord. So the very last time we played, we're going to end it like that. So I just noticed that in passing. Now letter C is a little interlude which sets up letter D. I think maybe you should play the melody on this, and it's a very unusual little part. It kind of builds throughout it, and then it comes down at the end, at the 2/4 bar. So let's just look at that. Let me just play it once alone. And that's going to set up the melody, which really builds into the D section. Now the D section, I think you should play the melody also. And once you're in, you'll be playing the melody all the way. The D section gets into some triplets, and I'm going to hold longer chords there. Let's try it, 3, 4. So if we put that all together now, I think, let me just say a word about the D section. I'm playing kind of a C sharp with an 11th in it. Playing the F sharp, C sharp 11th. And then one way of writing this is a B major over G, or it's also a G major 7th with a raised 5th. If you look at a G major 7th and you augment the 5th, there's another way of notating it. So it could be either one. You'll notice I kind of hold and let you play the melody on the first 4 bars of D. It's kind of spacey. And then once we get to the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th bars, I come with a... Nice. Well, maybe we should put that all together, or do you want to talk about the solos first? What do you think?
Well, we could try to run it from...
Run the whole thing so far, and then we'll concentrate on the solo section. Okay, let's do that much as though we were performing it now. A little brighter. Maybe we can get an overhead shot here where you'll see how I am voicing some of the chords if you want to look at that a little bit. So the first time is just the piano alone, okay? I'll count 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's right up until the little interlude before the solo section. We could have done that better, right?
Yeah, the triplets.
Maybe we'll play the whole song again later. We'll have another shot at it. That is a hard section. Letter C, it's a different kind of voice leading. Then this is a very strange change. You know, going from A minor over G sharp to a D 7th with the 3rd in the bass. Then F sharp minor. I love this piece. This is a really marvelous piece of music. I urge you to really get into this one. You know, it's fun. So next we're going to look at the solo section. Okay, the solo section has a little letter E. You'll notice just a 4-bar interlude that goes before the first solo and before any of the soloists. So what you do is you play letter E. The rhythm section kind of sets that up. I'm the rhythm section here, I guess. And I'm playing a D2 chord. It's a Charleston figure, a D2 to an E minor sus. You see that? So I do that for 4 bars. It could be a D major 7th or 9th to an E minor if you wanted to. And then when the solo starts, we generally try to build very sparsely at the beginning of these solos. Just begin sparsely and build, because we're working with very few chords. You'll notice I have the same 2 chords go through the first 4 bars of the solo. This is letter F I'm speaking of. And then we shift to 2 other chords, which is E minor over B. I prefer to play it like more of a G chord. It's kind of an E minor sus to a C6-9 chord. Now, as far as the scales, the basic scales we'd use in soloing, in the first 4 bars of that pattern at letter F, it would just be a D major scale. Now this tune is fun because you can refer to something really tonal, or you can go completely off the wall as you build the solo. It's such a free structure underneath. The harmonic thing is so free that you can almost go anywhere. And like if you really think about it, you could almost play anything over this and it's going to work. Or it won't work, depending on how much thought you put into it. Now the second 4 bars of it, the scale I'm going to use, I think of it as a C major Lydian scale with a raised 4th again. If you think of it off of B, what is it, a Phrygian off of B? Yeah.
Phrygian, I guess.
Yeah, right. It's really like our G major scale.
G major scale.
So you can play, you can put an F sharp in your chords. And that F sharp is usually there in the tonality. So that's the whole solo section. What you do is you play as long as a solo as you want on those 4 different chords, those 2 different modes. And sometimes you might want to experiment around. Like I know very often on the D chord I might go play a G flat scale over that. And I might, over the E minor, I might play E flat, which is like, gives a lot of tension to it. Now whoever, let's say for, we're going to play this for you a little bit later. Maybe I'll take the first solo, you know. We'll do the interlude, and then I'll do letter F and repeat it. And then I'll give you a cue. We go back to letter E, the interlude, for 4 bars before you start your solo. Then we keep repeating letter F. Now, whoever has the last solo on this tune, it says on cue. You'll notice on the 8th bar of letter F that it says on cue. That means the soloist has to cue the rest of the band that you're going to move on. Now, there's 4 more bars there on that C sharp minor 11th to that G major 7th raised 5th that we talked about. You keep soloing over that, over those changes, right? Probably that kind of a scale, right? It's the augmented Lydian scale again. And then you'll notice there's a del segno, which is a DS, that goes back to 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th bar of letter D. You see the sign there? So there's a sign at the end of those 4 bars, at the end of letter F, goes back to the 5th bar of letter D. Now the soloist keeps playing over the chords there, and the thing is really building at this point. So I'm going to be playing the chord, Mike's going to be playing over it. Now we kind of, just like we did at the beginning. And we come back, right? We come out, we diminish the volume a little bit. So the real climax of the whole piece occurs right there. So if you're thinking ahead and as you're building a solo, you don't want to get there too soon, you know? You want to lead up into that. So then we diminish our volume there, and then right at the end of that section, there's a sign that's a coda sign. It says al coda. Notice letter G is a coda. Now here we get into a little intricate interlude that Mike wrote in this, Mike Maneri, that's really beautiful. Now I've notated it in 4/16, 5/16, 6/16 time. Now the 16th notes are going by like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So in 4/16 we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. In 5/16 it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In 6 it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is a little tricky. You'll have to practice this very slowly. The way it sounds when you're coming in with the 16th note at that tempo, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Right there we go back into 4/4. You notice that last bar there is in 10/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we start counting back in quarter notes again. This is a little intricate. I know this is not easy. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I'm sorry, I goofed a bar there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we go DC, which is back to the top, the very top of the tune. Now what we do, this is we call this the road map of the tune that I'm discussing with you. Once we get to that, 2, 3, 4, the drums could fill, ba-boom, bum. We're back at the same feeling we had at the top, the same 16th note value there. The only difference is that at the top the piano played letter A the first time and the guitar joined them on the second time. When we come back to the da capo on this DC, it's going to be, we're only going to play it once. We're not going to play the repeat at letter A. We're going to play it only once and then go on to letter B. So Mike, you'll be in there right at that point. So we come right out of the little interlude, letter G. Right. We count 6 beats, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we come right in on the F7 at letter A. And then we play letter A once, we go into letter B, and then remember I said that on the last time we're going to do a retard and a fine right there. So I think we've got the roadmap pretty straight. Now the thing for you to do on this, besides learning the song and the form of it, which is really fun, and you could have a lot of fun if you have a band or some friends to perform this together. I'd spend a bunch of time working on the solo section. You could actually invent some other sections that are the same kind of 2-chord approach, just 2 scales, because this is a very free way of playing jazz. You're not going from not going all over the place with changes, you know what I mean? Here we're just you can build something quite dramatic and beautiful out of a simple structure like this. This is one of the reasons I wanted to show you this tune, because I think it's a side of playing that's it's not only currently very popular and used in rock and pop music and everything, it's really, really fun to stretch out on something like this. So I think what we're going to do now is try to perform it for you. You got any questions about it before we go on? Are you pretty clear on the roadmap?
I think I'm pretty clear.
Yeah.
Piano first solo.
Yeah, let's do that, and then I can comp under you as you, remember we're going to extend the solo on a cue, but you're going to have to give me a cue at the end of your solo, you know, the last time, or I'll yell, or you can do anything you want to. Throw something at me.
Sure.
However you want to do it. Okay, let's find a tempo, and then we'll play Mike Maneri's Sarah's Touch for you. Isn't that a great tune? It's fun. Now, I don't know if you go back and check on it a little bit, what we did in the solos. I have no idea what we did in the solos. It's that fleeting. You know, it's something such in the moment. The best way to play a solo that I can see is you do all your practicing and you're thinking at home, and once you get in a situation when you're performing, the ideal situation is what is known as what do they call it? It's a level of consciousness, like the downhill skier. No thoughts in the head. Like if the moment of a skier thinks of something, he's going to crash. He's going to go into the fence. It's the same state of consciousness. If you can develop that state of consciousness of actually no thoughts in the head, it's the best state to be in for performing. But in order to do that, I'm not saying that that's easy to do. First of all, if you do make a wrong note, it's not like a skier or a race car driver. You're not going to die, you know. So it's not that critical to you that to be that focused. But if you strive to get that kind of concentration in your playing, then you have. If people ask you how did it go last night, you say, "I have the faintest idea." You know, you have a pretty good idea that it was a good gig that you played. This is more for you that are going into it professionally. I'm talking about. Even whenever concentration is a very important thing to try to achieve on this. So I'd say as far as study habits go, try to be disciplined, try to work as much as you can. I personally find that if you spend, it's better to spend 10 minutes 4 times in a day than to sit down at 40 minutes for some people. For others, it's better to do a concentrated period. Whenever I start getting bored or I start playing mechanically or I'm not listening, I try to catch myself. I go out for a walk. If you want to be bad, you can have a smoke or something. Talk to somebody on the phone, go putter around, do something else, but then try to come back to it, when your mind is fresh. It's better to do a lot of short segments of practice. I hope we've helped you today. I'd like to thank Mike for being so generous to come by and sharing his compositions and his talent with us and his great knowledge of music. I have more in store for you. I hope there's a continuation of this series. So now we've got 3 volumes, and I think if you study your way through all of these, you can become quite accomplished at the not only reading and writing, but your improvising. If you have questions, this is something I mentioned in one of the other tapes, please send a postcard or a letter with a self-addressed stamped envelope to Homespun Tapes, care of me. And if you have particular questions on developing technique or whatever, or you're running into getting stuck in a rut, you're welcome to write to me, and I'll try to answer you the best that I can. So have fun and work hard, and I hope to see you soon on Homespun again. Thank you.